Okay, we are live, I think. So this is the part where anybody who's on here now who hears us, let us know you can hear us perfectly, and we'll go from there. We'd hate to start talking and you got no audio. So we'll kill a little bit of time here, let some people get in.
I've always wanted to start my own business, but I
Huh?
never knew how.
That's an ad.
Showing up at your live chat?
Yeah. Huh.
Those assholes.
Shh. Everybody can hear me? Anybody who's on here? I'm going to skip this ad on this one. There we are. I didn't realize there was an ad before a live event. So
Surprise.
Surprise to us. So anybody who's in here, let us know that you can hear us okay. Yes, I guess that's a yes. That's yes, you can hear us, I'm assuming. Hello from San Francisco. Yes, loud and clear. Thanks, Paul. All right, so what's going to happen here is I have a nice little handwritten things of all the things I want to cover. And Janice has her clipboard ready. She's going to write down any questions, but my suggestion is if you have questions about the actual Atlantic crossing, maybe save them till after I'm done my story, because I think by the time I'm done telling you all the stuff that happens, I might have already answered your questions. So I'll be answering the questions at the end, and if you ask a question at the beginning about the Atlantic crossing, I may not get back to it if I don't cover it here. So ask at the end.
Nothing happening for Wayne Price here.
Nothing happening. Wayne, I think everybody else is having something happen, so not sure what to say. Somebody from Ottawa, wow. New Jersey.
I think he says, hey guy from Ottawa. Okay, maybe he's from Ottawa.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So we'll leave it a couple more minutes. So if anybody has any questions, just generic questions right now, let's go ahead and ask those now. And then when I get on to my story about the transatlantic crossing, then we'll go through a story sort of, and then at the very end we'll open it back up to questions, and you can ask anything that I didn't cover in the Atlantic crossing. So
The UK is what?
so far lots of people from Denmark, another
from
person
Ottawa.
yeah, Holland,
Ooh, Holland and
Sydney,
Australia.
Australia. Woohoo.
I want to send my son over there.
Yes, she's really trying to get him to go to Australia. I don't know why she wants to go halfway around the world.
Because
Okay, so what we're going to do is first I'll just tell you the story. So some of you saw the live episode before. I'm just going to go over quickly, in case anybody missed it, how we got this opportunity to do in this transatlantic. So we were at the Annapolis Sailboat Show. As part of our YouTube channel, we got asked to go as media. We met Paul and Cheryl Shard, which have many of you already know, have a TV series on outdoor life and cottage life and all these other channels called Distant Shores. They were at the Annapolis show as well as media, and they asked me if I'd like to go on a transatlantic crossing, which I was like, yeah. Yeah, she was like, go! But I had about 5 weeks of vacation saved up, and so it worked out perfect timing. I needed to burn off this vacation, and so I said yes right away. And as I mentioned before, I ended up doubling up as a crew member in a cabin with a guy named Dan, which just dumb luck of dumb lucks. I'd met once before when Janice and I were in St. Thomas for our scuba diving certificate, right before we chartered our first catamaran last winter. We met a guy named Dan and his wife, Nicole, and they recognized us from the channel, and they were in a restaurant and they waved and said hi and said come on in, and we had drinks, and I met them. They were great people. And then just dumb luck, Paul and Cheryl Shard say, oh, by the way, you're going to be sharing a cabin with a guy named Dan, and by the way, he says he's met you before. So it was just talk about a small world, right? Sailing community sometimes feels small because everybody sort of bumps into everybody over and over again. But that was a case where I couldn't believe the chances of that. You're writing something down today.
It's just a question.
Okay.
Later.
Okay. So that's how I got this opportunity to do this transatlantic crossing. It was a brand new...
Can we turn up the volume a bit? Can we?
That's on your end. We can only record at one volume, and you guys decide how loud you want to hear it, unless we're getting no volume, which is what I wanted to know at the beginning. Okay, so Dan and I, we started talking when we realized we were going to share a room together, and we'd met each other before and gotten along. So Dan and I talked before the trip, and neither one of us have been outside of North America. Neither has Janice. Poor Janice. She didn't get to go on this trip. But
That's why I want to send my son to Australia.
Yeah, so long and short, we decided the only way to get to Las Palmas, where the boat was going to be, the trip was going to go from Las Palmas, which is the Gran Canary. Las Palmas is sort of like a city on this Gran Canary island. It was going to go from Las Palmas to St. Lucia, across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. It's about, the route we had to go, it's about 3,000 nautical miles. It's pretty long. But the only way for us to get to Las Palmas was to fly to Spain directly, because it's a Spanish island and it's so small that there's no direct flights from Canada or the United States directly to Las Palmas. So the only thing we could find was I found a sweet deal. Every Saturday, there's a flight that leaves Montreal, which is only 2 hours away from where we live. Direct flight from Montreal to Barcelona, super cheap. And to get one plane, like literally get on one plane and you're there, was a very rare opportunity, and it was super, super cheap. So Dan and I discussed to take that, there had to be the Saturday right before we needed to get on the boat, or bump it back an entire week earlier to the previous Saturday. So we decided to do that. So neither Dan nor I had ever experienced anything in Europe. We thought, let's take this one-time opportunity to go to Spain. I guess it was around 11 days prior to the actual sailing trip, and go explore Spain. So that's why you're seeing this footage now. We flew to Barcelona because of the super cheap airfare, and we thought the Airbnbs were really cheap until we actually picked the date, and then we found out they're not as cheap as we thought. But nonetheless, it was still a really amazing Airbnb with a rooftop terrace, as you saw if you've watched those episodes. We love that Airbnb. And then we thought when we were booking it, do we really want to be in Barcelona for 11 days or 10 days by the time you fly there? In hindsight, we probably could have, because we missed a lot of things. I know I got flack from one viewer, I think it was Doug or somebody, who said, you didn't go to all these things in Barcelona that are really great and you missed them. And I'm like, well, we're new and we don't speak the language. And so we kind of just went there, and once we got our Airbnb, which is perfectly situated, then we thought, let's just go with what's in walking distance of this well-situated central Airbnb. So we caught a lot of the things we could walk to, but we didn't get to Montserrat, which is a mountain, which has got a kind of like a fort on top, which is cool. And there's a bunch of things that were more further away, which we really couldn't obviously get to without renting a car or doing something like that, and we decided against it. So if anybody's disappointed in Barcelona that we didn't get to what you think is the favorite thing, it's unfortunate. It had to be within a reasonable walking distance of our Airbnb. So anyways, that's where we're at now. We went Barcelona, then we went to Valencia, which is the episodes we're on now. And then I know a lot of you were more interested in the actual sailing aspect of the Transatlantic, and that's where the episode is coming up after one more episode in Valencia. Well, actually two more. There's one that I've already almost finished about the old city, where there's a walled old city in Valencia. It's very cool, amazing architecture, and we're going to explore that. And then the episode after that, we're doing the aquarium, which, just a heads up, is way, way better than the Barcelona aquarium. And we do one other thing that same day, and then we're done. So if anybody's just been like itching to get on to the transatlantic crossing stuff, it's coming, but I have to do it in chronological order or it'll make no sense. So so we leave Las Palmas, we get to Las Palmas, we fly there we leave Las Palmas on the 12th of October, right? I'm doing
December? No, November.
October.
You left here
November,
right before
Halloween.
Halloween.
Sorry, I left here. We left Montreal on 28th. We got to Spain. We stayed there, and we got into Las Palmas on the 12th of November. And then we actually got to the 8th, and we left the 12th. And the intention of the trip was, the owner of the boat, kind of a funny story here, the owner of the boat, John, is actually the founder of Discovery Yachts. And he also, before that, was the founder of Sunsail, the charter company. So he's got a lot of sailing experience, and he founded and owned Discovery Yachts, which makes the Southerly, which is what Paul and Cheryl Shard have, and Discovery Yachts, which are mostly known for monohulls. Paul and Cheryl Shard are kind of brand ambassadors for Southerly, which is therefore is Discovery. And now Discovery has decided to venture out into catamarans. They made a catamaran years ago, which was a totally different layout. It's the one you liked.
It had the master cabin along the whole width of the boat. Yeah. And his and her bathrooms and his and her dressing rooms.
But Janice liked it because of the way it laid out. Yeah. But most sailors didn't like it because the master cabin was in front, which means when you're in the salon, you couldn't see forward. There was a room in front. So, of course, most people hated that layout because of that. And so they didn't sell as many catamarans as they probably were hoping they were going to sell. So they ended up revamping, totally redoing the catamaran. And the one I just sailed on was the very first model of this new design. And it's been bought by the owner, who's now retired from Discovery, and him and his wife want to sail around and live on this catamaran. But being the very first one of this shape, it's sort of like a prototype. They put out what the best product they possibly thought they could do, but now that we've sailed it, we gave them some tips on little things that they might want to change, which you'll see in the episodes coming up. But overall, my thought on the Discovery 50-foot, they call it a Blue Water 50, is it's a very solid boat, super structurally rigid, like when we were going over waves and stuff. Paul knows more than I do. He took out a Voyage 50 for 3 weeks. They chartered it, and he says it's very flexible. So when it goes over waves, one hull goes over a wave, and then the other, and the structure in the middle kind of flexes and bends, and there's a lot more squeaking and banging and stuff that goes on. And we didn't find that with the Discovery Yacht, which is nice, and the way it's described is it's just a very stiff frame. So if you're wondering about that, it seems like a really good boat except for a couple of small things that we would change, but they were just cosmetic mostly. And we told John, and John will tell the production company what they think they should change. So let me just go down the things. So okay. So this Discovery yacht was literally right from the factory. So it came out of the factory, went to the Southampton Sailboat show to showcase it, and then not long after that, John took it to some island to register the boat near England, where it's made. And then he paid a delivery crew to go from this island near England all the way to Las Palmas. And they were the first ones who really wet tested this boat, and they found a few issues that they told us about, because we were now going to take it across the Atlantic. And one of the things was the hatches. You'll see in the videos when they come out. The escape hatches in the bottom of the Catamaran were leaking, and they couldn't figure out why, and we didn't know why. And then we eventually found out it's because the hatches were rushed because they wanted to get to the Southampton boat show, and the escape hatches that they put in the bottom were actually just normal hatches. I learned this. Most escape hatches have 4 handles, and if you know what a hatch on the top of your boat looks like, it usually just has 2 handles and a hinge. So you open those 2 handles and you open the hinge.
Cheryl is here. Hi.
Oh, hey, Cheryl. And that's pretty much the way these escape hatches were. So the owner was made aware about the leak, and then he talked to the company, and they said, oops, we sent it to the Southampton show with these kind of like good enough hatches, but they weren't supposed to be the permanent hatches. So that's the only thing you'll see in the episodes that come up. We were trying to figure out why these 2 hatches would leak when a wave would slap it, and that was the reason, because the hatches needed to be changed for the ones that should have been put in the first place. I guess they were back ordered when it was made. So that was pretty much the only major thing that we were like, couldn't figure out why these hatches would not stop leaking on us. But other than that, really good boat, really solid, very comfortable. I was in the bow with Dan, and the rooms were, even in the bow, were very wide. In fact, most catamarans we've seen, the bow doesn't have much in the way of cabinets. They're very narrow at the bow. And this boat was, because it had like sail lockers in front of our cabin, so that we were kind of, even though we're in the bow, we're a little bit further back. It was nice and wide and very comfortable. So yeah, again, you'll see all that when we show you the footage. That's kind of showing you what's coming up. So one of the things that I want to talk about is what's it like to sail for 3 solid weeks. It should have been 2 weeks, but we ran into really, really low winds. Paul and Cheryl's on the channel, and I'm assuming Paul's probably listening too. Paul and Cheryl, if you don't know already, Distant Shores, they've been doing this for like 30 years. And I'm trying to remember if Paul said they've been across the Atlantic 9 times. So they have lots of experience with Atlantic crossings. And the route we were taking, where we go south until the butter melts past Cape Verde and then go west, is the route everybody takes. And usually there's plenty of trade winds to push you along. So it wasn't a case of, we didn't think that we needed to be completely topped up with fuel. One thing about this Discovery catamaran is they make absolutely massive storage for your fuel. There's 3 fuel tanks, 1 in each hull and then 1 in the middle. And I was talking to John, the owner, before we left, and he said there's enough fuel capacity in this boat that if you filled it up, you could actually motor all the way across the Atlantic. So anyways, long and short, you'll see when the episodes come. This is just foreshadowing. We only had the tanks, I guess 2 tanks were 2/3 full. 1 tank the middle tank wasn't full at all. I think pretty close to empty. And so we had about half the capacity the boat would handle. And here's another thing that I learned from this. We bought a gas outboard motor for our dinghy, right? And when you break in a gas motor, you really slowly break it in. So the first 10 hours, it's only like 50% throttle, and the next 10 hours, it's 75% throttle, and then eventually you can go to 100% throttle. Diesel tanks, which I've never known because our boat was old when we got it, are broken in the other way around. The delivery crew who brought it to Las Palmas, when they got there, they had their 100-hour service done on the engines, and the service technicians in this modern day and age plug computers into your motor, and they know exactly how you've been driving it. So they actually had graphs that said, this boat's been motored at idle speed pretty much all the way to Las Palmas, like 14 or 1500 RPM. And these things need to be broken in at like 2300 RPM, so please motor them quick. So anyways, this 2-week passage with the lack of wind, we started using motors, and of course every time we used the motor, we kept one motor on, not the other, but we were trying to motor at 2300 RPM, like as per the factory recommended usage, and of course that made us blow through fuel a lot quicker than we were expecting, because at 1400 or 1500 RPM, the thing sips fuel, but at 2300 RPM, it went down pretty damn quick. So what you're going to find out is we get about halfway crossed, and of course I'm texting Janice. The only connection we had with home was an Iridium, sort of like a modem, a satellite modem, where all of us on board were able to send text messages to our family and friends. And I was telling Janice our progress, and every day it was, yeah, we barely have any wind, and we're not moving very fast, and now we're almost at, we're getting to the point where we don't want to use the engines anymore. And so that's where that happened. Long and short, I booked a flight for December 2nd. We were supposed to get in the 25th or 26th, and the owner was going to meet us there on the 27th. We figured if we got the 25th or 26th, we had a day or two to clean the boat, and then the owner would come on and we would get off. And Dan and I had planned to stay in St. Lucia for a number of days and stay in an Airbnb again and fly out. I was going to fly out, and Dan was the same thing, to different locations, but we were both flying out December 2nd, and we didn't make it on time. We got to St. Lucia the 3rd or the 4th? Third. 1 day, 2 days.
So I booked him a new ticket for the 4th.
Yeah, and poor Janice had to be the bearer of bad news for my work.
I had to call his staff sergeant and speak to his staff sergeant to say he's not showing up for work on Monday, and also he's not going to that really important course you signed him up for either.
Yeah.
That starts on Monday.
Yeah. I'm a sergeant, and they send me on this ICIR intensive sergeant course for the 4th of December, and I thought that's plenty late after I should be into St. Lucia. So I didn't obviously tell them I might not make it, and then I had to have Janice call, because I couldn't phone. Have Janice call my work and say, cancel him off that course, and oh, by the way, he's not coming to work when he said he was going to come to work. So she said that they were very polite and very nice about it, but the police are sort of like a military, paramilitary kind of thing. You don't usually just call in and say you're not going to come to work. You have to ask permission to not come to work. So I felt a little awkward telling her to tell my bosses that I'm not coming to work. So
yeah, and his boss calls me back, and he's like, oh, we have to do the leave schedule right now for next summer.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
can you pick his annual leave for him? And she's
like, can I pick it for him? I'm like,
yeah,
it's pretty much my decision anyway. Whenever it's time to pick his leave, he calls me and asks me when to take it. So there.
Yeah. So she had to pick my annual leave and also tell him I'm not coming to work.
I had to book.
So that was that. So we got there December 3rd. Now, December 3rd. So long and short, things that I learned that I didn't do before. We spent a lot of time with this low wind using a spinnaker. That was awesome, because we don't have a spinnaker on our boat. And learning how to use a spinnaker in general was cool, but learning how to use a spinnaker on a catamaran was really cool, because you have two hulls, and you tie it off at various blocks on the corners of each hull, and it really worked well. I mean, in low winds, we were still able to move this big 50-foot catamaran at like 6 knots in like 9 or 10 knots of wind. So that was, following wind too. So as you know, as you move downwind, the faster you go, the less apparent wind you have. So I was very impressed with how fast the boat moved in very low winds. But shift schedule, you're moving nonstop, which Janice and I, the longest we've ever been on a boat is 12 hours nonstop. That was going down the St. Lawrence. This was 3 weeks nonstop. So you have to do shifts, and we were in teams of 2, and the way we worked it was we did 3 shifts, and we stuck to we were thinking about doing a rotating shift where we start a shift, and when you come on the next time, your shift's a little later than the last time. Eventually you work all the way around the 24-hour clock. But one of the members didn't really want to do that for their sleep habits. They say they like having a set schedule, so we all agreed to go to a set schedule, and then we had to pick our schedule. So Paul and myself were 4 to 8 a.m. and 4 to 8 p.m. And then somebody else was, the next 4 hours, and then somebody else was the next 4 hours to cover off all the 24 hours. And it was pretty good for your sleep habits, but I'm not a morning person. So me getting up at 3:30 in the morning to get started at 4 in the morning always felt like a bit of a kick in the stomach every morning. But it was always nice to possibly see a sunrise, and also being 4 to 8 p.m. we were working or on duty when we had the sunset. So it was cool for that standpoint. So, but it is weird to constantly be moving. I mean, even when you're sleeping, the boat's sailing, or when we were able to motoring, and it's just constant movement. You're never anchored, and it took a little getting used to for me. But it was good. Obviously, because of the lack of wind, I don't have any horror stories about massive waves, 30-foot waves were pounding through and stuff like that. So it wasn't anything like that. I don't think we ever got more than 2 or 3 meter waves, and more of like a rolling wave, not a cresting wave that's slapping the crap out of the boat. It was more like long waves between them. So it wasn't too bad. And because of that, there wasn't too much pounding. I know catamarans, with the the deck in between the two hulls. Sometimes with bigger waves, the waves come up underneath and kind of bang into the bottom of the boat. And it wasn't too bad. I mean, there was a little bit of that from time to time, but it wasn't very, very bad. But when it does happen, it kind of does, especially when I was new to the boat and I was in the bow. If a wave came underneath and slammed into the bottom, it kind of woke me up. I'm a light sleeper anyway, but that, you know, eventually you get used to that sound. You kind of wake up half awake when that happens, and then you go right back to sleep again. Things that I wanted to see, bucket list things, that happened day one was dolphins. Mm-hmm. When we had our week-long catamaran charter in the Caribbean, we kept looking at the bow. Is there any dolphins? Nothing for the entire week. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, maybe seeing dolphins is really, really, really hard to, you know, like YouTube, everybody who's sailing around on YouTube, they all see dolphins. And I thought, well, maybe it's a wives' tale that they're that easy to spot. Well, the very first day we leave Las Palmas, we have dolphins on our bow. It was awesome. And the very first night that I was with Paul at the 4 to 8 a.m. shift, Paul goes, have you seen the back of our wake? And I look back, and there's little sparks coming out the back of the boat. And it was the little bioluminescence from the
plankton.
Plankton. But then every once in a while, they look like fireflies coming out behind the boat. And it's when you stir up the water, these plankton spark, and they make a bioluminescence. But every once in a while, there would be a bigger one. And I think somebody said those might be little jellyfish. I'm not sure what they were, but there was little firefly sparks, and then every once in a while there'd be a big glowing thing, and that was pretty cool. I told Janice, but I was all excited because I thought bioluminescence is so rare, and I learned it happened every single night. So after a while, you're looking back, bioluminescence, that again. So that was kind of interesting because I've never heard that on YouTube that it happens all the time. But our entire trip across the Atlantic, at night between 4 and 8 a.m., we'd have little sparks of bioluminescence. So Janice is looking forward to seeing that. She said she wants to see that. And dolphins. Oh yeah, and then halfway, so we saw the first day, and I thought, man, I guess we see them all the time now. And then we didn't see them again for like a week and a half. And then at that point, about halfway or a little bit past halfway, we had another massive group of dolphins, I think like 20, and they were in the bow of our boat. And the funny thing is, I never thought this would ever happen. It was so exciting. And then after half an hour, they're still playing in the bow of the boat. And we actually all just went, and went back to doing what we were doing, because after a while, you know, the dolphin thing becomes kind of like, you can only watch it so much before you kind of got to go back to your regular life. So, but it was very cool. And I've got lots of footage of that coming up in episodes. I got the drone up too for all you Mavic Pro people that want to see that. I did get the Mavic Pro up, and Paul and Cheryl attest to this. Wow, was it hard to get back onto the boat. So we were sailing with this spinnaker and flew around, awesome footage. But then at the very end, I was down to whatever amount of battery power. Actually worse than my drone battery power is my phone said you're down to 10% battery. And I was afraid I was gonna literally lose my phone, which is my screen, before I landed the drone on a moving boat. So Dan agreed he would stand on the side of the boat and try and catch it, because the problem with Mavic, when you try and land and you push down, let's say over a flat surface, it'll say, are you sure you want to land? And when it does that, you lose control, like it kind of pauses in place, and meanwhile the boat keeps moving and your drone doesn't. So you have to, it's just way easier to try and catch your drone than try and land on a moving boat. So he tried to catch it, but as you know, with these modern drones, they all have sensors up below it and out the front and all these things. And so when I first was trying to fly towards him, it was sensing him and wouldn't get close enough. And then I had to fly above him quite high and then try and come down on him, and then he had to reach up, but the sensors underneath were avoiding him. It was just, and then of course, again, the boat's moving. So I almost lost my drone, and so we only did it one time. After that, we were like, no more drone flights off a moving sailboat. So, and we did swim once in the middle of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I wanted that.
Yeah, we actually had one day where there was absolutely no wind, and we were on bare poles because the sails, when there's no, below a certain amount of wind, it's not even worth having the sails out because they just flap and it's just hard on the sails. So we just took the sails down, and it was so little wind that we just threw a line behind the boat and all went swimming, with the exception of poor Cheryl, who stayed on the boat because you always have to have somebody. Well, yeah, she said she didn't want to swim because somebody would have gotten out and let her swim, but for whatever reason, Cheryl, you can let me know why.
Swim.
She didn't want to swim.
Come back out.
But we got footage of that as well. I got my GoPro out, and Paul got his GoPro out, and everybody had GoPros. I think Dan had his GoPro out. So we got lots of footage of us swimming in the middle of the Atlantic, and it's kind of crazy to know that you're like 7,000 feet down to the bottom. It's just amazing. So
anyway. You can't film the bioluminescence.
No, somebody else. I really wish I could. I think Paul's camera, he has the Sony A7R2 or whatever. or A7X2 or whatever, the one that's really good in low light. He tried to film it. He didn't have a really fast lens though. He had a normal lens, it was one of these zoom ones that starts at one focal, f2 point something, and it goes up to f3 point something. So he tried with his lens because he's got a really good camera for low light, but it wouldn't quite do the bioluminescence. He could get the stars, which was every night we had beautiful stars. Oh, I have to tell that story too. About the Chinese satellite thing. But he'd film the stars, it'd be beautiful, but the bioluminescence aren't quite bright enough. But he said if you got one of those basic, like an f1.4, 25 millimeter, just a basic lens, he probably could have got the bioluminescence filmed as well. But my camera isn't that good at low light, and I don't have a super, super, super fast lens. So no, I wasn't able to film the bioluminescence. But just believe me, it's there every single day. So tons of shooting stars. We had so clear conditions. I think we only got spit on a couple of times by tiny little squalls, but most of the time it was just beautiful and sunny every day. So every night when we were the 4 to 8 shift, I saw shooting stars. And Paul and I and Dave saw it after the fact. We're blown away by one night we thought we saw a shooting star that went on for a minute solid. And the story was this: Paul's out at the helm, and I'm inside eating my yogurt for my 4 a.m. yogurt at the salon table. And he goes, "Craig." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, something." So I go to get out from behind the table. By the time I'm getting out, the table is calling me a second time, so that's how long it's already gone by. And I get out there and I see a really bright light on the horizon. He said he saw it right before he even called me. He saw a light right on the water level, and he thought it must be a boat coming that's not showing up on our radar. But by the time I got there, it was a little bit above the horizon, but it was very bright. And at this point, we're like, "What is that? Is it a plane?" It's so bright. And then it burst into flames, and then it had a tail behind it, so it looked like a comet or a meteor. But it went all the way across the sky, and we were yelling and like, "Oh my God!" And Dave gave him kind of joked about it. He called, "Holy sugar pops," he was saying. And Dave's cabin's right underneath where the helm is, and his windows were open. And he heard us, exclaiming, "Oh my God, I can't believe it! Oh my God!" And he was like, "What the hell is all this racket about?" So he opens up, he looks through his port light there, and he sees what we see, which is this flaming thing going across the sky that must have been up there for a minute as it went across the sky. It looked to be about 10 miles behind our boat. And at first I'm like, it's got to be a meteor, but I'm like, I've never seen a meteor go across from one extreme horizon all the way across the sky for a minute solid. They usually go way faster than that. So Dave later saw it through the window, and later he got up and said, "You know what? I remember reading on the internet before we came that there's some Chinese space station that's been decommissioned since 2013 that they say is now losing orbit, and it's going to come down sometime in the next month." And then we were like, that had to be it. This big, huge hunk of steel was going across the entire sky with a flaming tail and little sparks of what looked like debris falling off of it. And it is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Paul and I will probably never ever see anything like that again. Unfortunately, you never have your camera ready for that sort of thing, but 3 of us saw it on the same boat. So, of course, the Chinese will never tell you that we looked on the internet afterwards to find out if they admitted that there's space station came flying down in space junk into the ocean, but it had to be that. There was nothing else that would spend a minute going across the sky. So that was probably the coolest thing I'll probably ever see, because how often do you see a space station fall? So those were the things I saw on this trip, and I think that's pretty much everything that you're gonna see or hear about on the episodes to come. Now Janice, she's been getting text messages about everything that happened along the way, and I'm going to ask you, even if somebody doesn't ask you, would you want to do a 3-week crossing nonstop on a sailboat?
Absolutely.
You would, eh?
I would.
Okay. I believe her, actually. I do believe her.
Yeah.
She's not afraid of
anything. I like a lot of peace and quiet, and I don't get lonely. I was single a very long time before I met Mr. Perfect here. Mm-hmm. So a 3 weeks on a boat, just with a few people, would not be too boring or lonely for me, for sure.
But knowing what I've seen, because we had 2-person per platoon, I guess, covering a 24-hour shift. And the thing about having 2 people is one person can go make a coffee or tea or go sit in a chair and close their eyes for 10 or 15 minutes, or 20 minutes is what Paul and I tend to do. 20 minutes, one person would sit at the helm, and then the other person would just do whatever they want, and then we'd switch back and forth for the 4 hours we were on. If it's just Janice and I going across this passage, and I know Paul and Cheryl have done this, just the 2 of them on these passages, that might be hell, because you never have anybody to take over from you, and you're never going to hardly see each other, because one of you is awake, the other one's trying to sleep, and then you switch. And a lot of times when there's only two, you don't do 4-hour shifts, you do 3 hours. So what happens is you do 3 hours on, and the other person tries to sleep for 3 hours, and then you swap, and then you keep swapping constantly. So I'm not a.
And I'm good at sleeping.
She's good at sleeping, and
I'm good at napping.
Yeah, sadly I'm not. So if I fall asleep, it takes me about half an hour to fall asleep. So if I only had 3 hours, by the time you.
And he's very easily disturbed.
Yeah, I'm a light sleeper.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just think that might be hell. So one thing I've learned from this is if I go across the Atlantic with Janice on our boat, we're going to be canvassing friends or YouTube viewers or Patreons or whoever saying who wants to go on this crossing with us, because just the two of us on this crossing could be hell. It really could
4.
be hell. Yeah, 4 would be good. 4 would be good. I don't think you necessarily need to double up and have 2 on each platoon like we did, because if you only had 3-hour shifts, you could have 4 people doing 3-hour shifts, and for 3 hours you can stay awake. It's not that hard. And then you don't have to be back on for, I guess, 9 hours, right? Before your turn would come up again. So yeah, when we have our catamaran, we will not do these long 2 to 3 week passages. As the two of us, it's just way too much, especially on someone like me who's going to know more about sailing than probably Janice will. So every time something weird is going on with the sails or there's some weird creaking sound, she'll probably wake me up, and so I won't get that much sleep. 3 weeks of no sleep, I will not be a happy camper. So anyway, so definitely we'll have crew aboard, but for those long passages, I think that's a must. A must. But you would do it.
I do.
She would do it. She already told me that. I already knew the answer. Yeah. So do you have some of the questions?
Let's just a few so far. People want to. If you have any really burning questions, go. So Kevin Mack is asking, are you going to? Oh, we'll cover that one later. So tell us about the motion on the Blue Water 50.
The motion. Well, I think the motion would be the same on any bigger 50-foot catamaran. I don't think the model is going to change the motion. The motion, okay, it's pretty easy to explain. Hey, Roger. We have a monohull. So you have a big, long lead keel that hangs down below. So when the boat gets pushed by a wave, there's more of a slow motion to it because the keel underneath has all this water resistance that stops you from just quickly jumping. So you tend to do this and then this and then this. With a catamaran, when one wave hits this one and then the other wave hits this one, it's more staccato. It's more like bump, 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 bump. So you don't heel over like we do in a monohull. So when you're sailing in a monohull, you're already leaning, and then every time a wave hits you, you lean a little bit more and then a little bit less, a little bit more, a little bit less. But you're always staying on a heel just because of sailing. With a catamaran, you're flat. But every time a wave slaps you, you kind of, one side goes up a little bit, then the other side goes up a little bit. So you can still leave a drink. Like, we're amazed this whole time. You leave your mug like this, just sitting, on the table, walk away, go to the washroom, do whatever, come back. It's still exactly where you left it. Even though the boat does this, it doesn't go this, that doesn't lean long enough for anything to slide. So it kind of left, right. So it's, I describe it as more of a staccato movement. It's not a slow lumbering movement. It's more of a jerk. So I liked it. Everybody on the boat loved it. We're all monohaulers. I have a Beneteau 35-foot. Dave and Alex have a 37-foot monohull, a Jeanneau, and Paul and Cheryl have a 40-something foot monohull, southerly. So long and short, we're all monohull people, but we all came out of this trip going, God, was this cat ever enjoyable to be on? Very comfortable. Like, you just leave everything everywhere. Your iPads, your phones, you just leave it on the table, you walk away. Half the time you forget it's there. You come back 8 hours later and it's still sitting there. So super comfortable. So.
I've been committed to eventual cat ownership since our very first boat show.
Yeah.
I knew I was getting a cat.
Yeah, it's definitely the most comfortable way to cross an ocean.
I like the prettiness. I like the bigness.
Yeah.
You like the salon and the brightness.
You like to be able to see too.
Yeah, like the biggest downfall for me of a monohull is just that it feels like a tiny basement apartment down there when you're stuck on it for a couple of rainy days in a row. And I'm okay with it for a day, but for a long term, nope.
The great thing too is if you are on a watch by yourself and it's raining or it's crappy, you can sit inside and see completely 360 degrees. Everything in front of you, it's like bay windows, and then behind you is usually sliding glass doors, so you can see behind you too. So you really don't even need to stand outside to look around to do a 360 pass, thing. At night, you turn off all the lights inside your salon, and you sit in the darkness, and you've got your autopilot and your little, your radar and screens and stuff at your nav station, and you can just kind of peer around through the windows. So you don't need to sit outside if you don't want to. So, well, you're doing that. Okay.
I'm trying to I'm supposed to be deleting these people, but I don't know how. Deleting the junk mail stuff.
Oh, okay.
Do you know how?
No.
Okay, well, I'll learn that later.
Anyways.
So, someone wants to know, a couple people want to know, is this boat going to be at the boat show in Annapolis in October?
This one? The Discovery one?
Right.
I don't know. John and his wife who own it.
Distant Shores 3 is a Souther 48, which will debut at the Dusseldorf Boat Show.
Yeah. Distant Shores boat. That's their brand new one. They just got made.
Southerly 48.
There we go, Cheryl. So their boat will be there if you're interested in the Southerly.
At the Dusseldorf. That's the one overseas.
Yeah, it's Germany, right? So
yeah.
That's the Southerly is a monohull, but it
keel.
has a swing keel, so you can go into really shallow spots in in Bahamas and that, where it's those places that only a cat might be able to get into. Now they can get in with their swing keel, so that's kind of a nice feature of their boat. But as for the Discovery yachts, they're obviously producing more. There's already another hull, I think, already in production, or two maybe in production. But I don't know what boat shows they're going to be on. I think just go to the Discovery Yachts website, and I'm sure they'll tell you where that boat was going to end up being in what boat show.
How does it compare to the Exquisite X5? Or the ones that were on at the boat show?
They're the same size. They're both 50 feet. I like the Exquisite for two reasons. I love that iPad controls everything.
He's Mr. Electronics.
Woo! I love all the technology.
He went to the Apple store last week to get something fixed and came home with a new iPhone. He does things like that regularly. So.
I have a spending problem when it comes to Apple products. I had my Mac.
A fancy electronic system, and that's a big selling point, a big plus for him.
Yeah. See, even Cheryl saying she learned the benefits of a catamaran on this ocean crossing. So.
Somebody asked, what is the biggest sailing tip you learned from the shards?
Sailing tip from the shards.
Yes. Best advice, maybe.
Well, I mean, just stuff that every sailor should know, but they kind of ran it home, was that you can't count on the instruments like the radar and the AIS, which we have, which is awesome to have. You can see ships coming as long as they have their AIS on. Unfortunately, a lot of fishermen and other people deliberately either don't have AIS because they don't care and they just put it in their boat, or they turn it off because they don't want other fishermen to know where their boat is. So you can't just look at your instruments and say, I know where all the boats are around here. There's not one for 50 miles. I don't need to worry. Because we came across, probably over a whole passage, we didn't cross that many boats, but we'd see boats, lights in the distance, and we could see it was an active fishing boat, and it would show up on our AIS. In fact, sometimes it didn't even show up on our radar. So you really have to get up every 20 minutes, whether you're inside looking through the windows or you're outside looking around. You have to, every 20 minutes, take a complete 360 pan, and don't count on the fact that just because nothing's on your radar and there's nothing on your AIS, there's nothing out there. There could be a sailor, a monohull guy, one of those solo sailor guys who goes to sleep and leaves the boat on autopilot, and he's not looking for you, and if you don't look for him, then you could actually run into each other. So just do that 360 pan every 20 minutes or so, because every 20 minutes nothing's going to come on you. Not even a freighter is going to come completely from out of sight to on you in 20 minutes. So as long as you look every 20 minutes, you're good. So that's probably the best thing I got from them.
What's the price point for this?
Yeah, that's why when somebody said, do you like the Exquisite or this more? I'm just saying, would I ever be able to afford this Discovery Yachts? No, it's out of my price range. The Exquisite is a little bit more, not that it's in my price range either, but just so you know, the Exquisite in US dollars was 1.2 million for the one that they had for sale at the show. I hear they're going to add $50,000 more to it, 1.25 million for the next one after that. From what I was told, and don't quote me for sure, but what I was told by Cheryl and whoever else on the boat, they heard that this Discovery yacht was 1.5 million pounds. So that's more than dollars. So that's probably, in Canadian dollars, that's probably like $2 million. In US dollars, it's probably like $1.7 million. So it's about $500,000 more than the Exquisite yacht. So yeah, long and short, it's more money than the Exquisite yacht. So it's way, before the Exquisite was out of my price range, but the Discovery yacht's way out of my price range. So yeah, but it's a really nice boat. It's really nice.
Yeah. How much water do you need for a passage?
Okay, so some of the things we had on the boat, this boat, of course, for that kind of money, this boat was kitted out. It had
a good one or two.
Nice soft solar panels on the roof. It wasn't the hard ones. It was the ones that were like right on the roof that are soft. It had a really nice quiet generator. I don't know how many kilowatts of generator it was, but it was quiet and able to run. And with either the solar or the generator, during the day we could run the water maker without running the generator. At night when there was no solar, we couldn't run the water maker without running the generator because we would just drain the batteries too quickly. So we had water maker on board, and there was a ton of water capacity. Just like I told you, there was 3 fuel tanks, and there was a lot of capacity. This boat is meant to be a liveaboard. It's not meant to be a charter boat. So it's built to live on, which means they know you're going to go on long passages. You're not just doing a day sail. So because of that, a lot of fuel capacity, a lot of water capacity. We generally never filled our water tanks because we had the water maker. And when Cheryl and me and Alex did some provisioning, we bought so much stuff on the off chance the water maker didn't continue to work. So we had tons of bottled water, canned pop, juices in juice boxes. And so we had tons of fluids in case the water maker quit. So you learned how to remove people?
Yeah,
Good.
I learned how to remove the bad things.
The bad things. So long and short, there was a lot of water capacity on the boat. I don't know the exact numbers. Again, go to the Discovery Yachts website. I'm sure they give you the exact specs. But there was more than we needed. We never filled the tanks with the water maker because even with half-filled tanks, that was going to last us a long, long time. And then on top of the fact, we bought tons of bottled water and what-if stuff in case the water maker died. So, any other questions?
Did you lose any camera equipment?
Other than my drone, which I almost lost? No, I don't think anybody lost any
He
camera.
did slightly damage his baby drone, or his baby camera.
Yes, yes. My favorite camera of all cameras, my
we're
vlog
gonna give it
camera
some
here.
surgery because I think they can fix it.
This is the camera I do almost all my vlog when I talk to myself stuff because it's got the flip up screen. And it's a Canon G7X Mark II. Love this camera.
It's my favorite. It's the only one I will.
Yeah, she uses this one. You don't have to focus it. It's really good at autofocus.
I just hold it and that's it.
And it's really good in low light. Like you don't even need lights on. Like we have lights on right now for the iPad to record us. But this camera is amazing in low light. You can go into somebody's house with just barely any lights and it'll act like it's super bright. So I love this camera. Unfortunately, when I was at the beach, and the beach scene you saw there in Barcelona, I put this down on the camera bag and it slid off face down onto the sand. Which this has little shutters that open. And see, they don't open anymore. See the little slit? It's only barely opening. So because I got sand in this little opening closing shutter thing, it now no longer
It's hopefully not scratching the lens at the same time.
No, there's lenses behind that little shutter thing. So this camera, which is not cheap, now needs some maintenance because it got some sand in the front lens. So I guess that's the closest thing that happened to me losing a camera was that I damaged a camera.
He lost something else.
Oh yeah, nobody knows this. I don't know if Cheryl knows this either. So I fly home and I'm tired.
Yes.
And I flew to Toronto and then I flew from Toronto to Ottawa on a little, tiny jump. It's like a 35-minute flight. And I'm thinking I left my passport on the plane.
Yeah.
I'm guessing I stuck it in that little magazine thing, and of course I got home at like 1:30 or 1:45 in the morning, and then I got home, and 2 or 3 days later, Janice was like, "Oh, give me your passport back so I can put it back in our storage spot." And I looked everywhere, I cannot find my passport. So I just had to go to the passport office yesterday and get another passport ordered because we want to go away in February, and I got to make sure I get a new passport between now and then. So that sucked. But yeah, no cameras, but I lost my passport on the way home.
Yes.
But I obviously had it all the way along because every plane makes you show your passport when you get on. And so I showed it to get on the plane from Toronto to Ottawa. But somehow or other, when I got home, I didn't have it. So I'm guessing I left it on the plane. And here's a weird thing. You'd think that Air Canada, I mean, they know who bought the ticket and your name and everything's on it. They would just phone you and say, "Hey, you left your passport here." Nope. I went to their website to try and find a 1-800 number to call for lost and found. And it says right on their website, "If you've lost your passport on our plane, we do not hold on to it. We give it to customs officials at the airport." So I called there and they said customs doesn't do anything to try and notify you they have your passport. They send it back to Passport Canada. And when you go to Passport Canada website, it says, if we get a passport returned to us, we just destroy it. We don't contact you. We don't tell you anything. So when you don't have your passport, don't come to us looking for it. So pretty much no matter where you lose your passport, you're never going to get it back again.
Thanks,
so.
Cheryl. She says your drone stuff was awesome and she's editing it into the distant shores. It's exciting.
That's awesome.
So the one almost losing the drone, that thing was worth it.
It was worth it once we got it back. But man, oh man. Now, some of the footage from that is pretty hilarious because it was coming in and then I was trying to get it on Dan and then it ended up flying right into the covered back open cockpit area through and out through the other side, and it could have just about hit two different poles on the way in and out. And it was pretty funny. They were like, "Oh my God, you're an amazing flyer to not have it hit anything." And I got to admit, part of it was just damn luck. I when it got in too far, I turned it and tried to get out, but it could have easily clipped one of those poles. And if it had done that, it would have gone pew, right into the water. So that's that.
And then I doubt they'd give you another replacement.
Yeah. That would have been human error if I crashed it into the boat and it fell in the water. They wouldn't give me a new one for that. Oh, thanks for somebody likes the beard.
Yeah, me too. That's why he still has that.
Yeah, because I actually was
Otherwise,
when I first grew it.
He wanted to shave it. He was like for months. Do you sure you like it?
I was like, yeah, it was so itchy at first. I was like, ah.
Well, that and he thinks it's well, yeah.
It's gray.
It's gray.
So I thought, my hair is not that gray, and this is very gray. So I was like, I don't know if I really like it. It makes me look older.
I dye my hair. I do have gray hair, also. So.
What other minor maintenance was needed while underway?
Makes you older. That's not what he wants to hear. Don't tell him I'm deleting.
Delete them. Maura, come on.
He's asking me. Just are you sure
she's a lady too, so she should.
Never mind. Don't listen to Maura.
Okay. What other issues other than the hatches did we have? There was only one other issue, and I don't know. We could never figure out what it was. Was the spinnaker halyard that we use the spinnaker a lot? It was squeaking. It was making this squeak, squeak, squeak every time the halyard moved. So the block at the top had some sort of squeak going on. It's a minor issue. But we have footage of Paul going to the top of the mast while we're in the ocean with swells coming and the thing's doing this. And he's up at the top of the thing with something equivalent to what's that, WD-40 stuff. And he's like spraying like crazy because he can't quite reach the top of the mast. He's just blindly spraying at the top, hoping to lubricate the block at the top. And I'm at the bottom filming him. And it's spraying down on me, like raining WD-40 all over me. And at one point I put my camera down because I was afraid it was spraying my lens. And Cheryl's at the nav station. She's going, "Oh, keep filming, keep filming." I'm like, "I am, but I'm getting rained on." And then Paul's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He's at the top. He saw it coming down on me. And he's like, "Oh, I hope it didn't damage your camera." So, yeah, just a bad, he's on one side of the mast spraying over top, and I'm on the other side of the mast filming and getting sprayed with oil. But anyways, we tried to lubricate it and get that to go away, but it didn't go away. So when we got there, of course, we've been texting John, the owner, the whole time, because when we got to St. Lucia, he could get some maintenance people to properly do maintenance on it. Kind of hard to do that in the middle of the ocean.
So someone's asking, is the Majestic 530 still at the top of your list? Yeah, right now I think the Exquisite and the Majestic are way, there's like 4 or 5 that they're really high top contenders.
I wish the St. Francis 50 had been at the Annapolis show because that used to be kind of near the top.
Yeah, it was pretty toppy.
And it's just so weird because you think you like one boat and then you see the other boat and you like it more, and then you see the other boat again and you like it more. So you kind of don't know what to think. And also you hear different things from different people. One person will be like, "Oh, the St. Francis 50 is awesome," and then another person will say, "Oh, they're a piece of junk." I mean, it's same with every boat. There's always naysayers and proponents of each boat, and you don't know who to believe. One person will say they're rock solid, and the other person will say there's all sorts of issues. So, got to sail it before you buy it. So that's my suggestion. Before you spend close to $500,000 on a used catamaran, you want to definitely take it out and maybe take it out for a couple of days in different weather conditions and listen for squeaks and listen for blocks that are squeaking and things that aren't lubricated properly.
Yeah, I don't I'm a very sound sleeper, but I also have very sensitive hearing for noise that I find irritating. So any tap, 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 squeak, 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 drip, drip, drip.
She'll be
click, 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 like that. I'll rip clocks down off walls, and I do it. I've done it before. So how much fuel was left at the end of the trip, if any?
Next to nothing, because we pretty much got down to fumes on the 2 tanks that had fuel. We had and then we sailed all the way until we were very close to the island before we motored the last bit to St. Lucia. Had we had more fuel, we probably would have motored a lot more at lower RPMs. When we found out how fast we were going through fuel at 2,300 RPM, when we dropped it down near the end to 1,400 or 1,500 RPM, the thing just barely, the fuel gauge barely moved, even though we would go for hours and hours. And had we done that right from the get-go, we probably could have gotten a lot further on the fuel we already had. And had we filled the tanks right full, we obviously could have motored longer. But it is what it is. Like I said, Paul said 9 crossings, and I think he said one of their crossings they used 20 gallons of fuel total the whole time, and that might have even been just to run a generator. I don't know. But he says they hardly ever use fuel, so this was just one of those bad luck times where there was just hardly any wind. So what are you going to do?
But Cheryl says they were able to fix that squeaky block while they were at the dock.
Oh, good.
And there wasn't sure.
Did Paul do that, or did somebody else?
Probably Paul. I think she said we went up the mast again.
Yeah, Paul was.
We were able to go up the mast again at the dock, so yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, when the boat was really heaving back and forth in the swells, he was up there getting thrown around. So I don't blame him for the fact that he didn't want to get like right to the top of the mast, because then you got nothing to hold on to but the top of the mast. Like you don't have the little spreaders or any of the wires to hold on to. So yeah, so he got as high as he felt comfortable doing and sprayed like crazy, but it didn't help. But obviously it helps once you get to a marina where you're nice and tied to a dock. So how did she handle compared to the cats you've been on? Well, I've only ever been on the Nautilus Open 40, the sailing. So this is only the second catamaran I've sailed on. It sailed really well. It's a rock solid boat, and it sailed pretty good even in low winds with the spinnaker. The spinnaker is a godsend. I never thought we needed a spinnaker because this boat was cool too. It had 2 forestays, 2 furlers, two furling forestays, one for a jib and one for a genoa. So what we did was we tied them out and prevented them from accidentally getting backwinded, and we had a wing on wing, and that's great if you have high winds. But unfortunately, we ran into a lot of low winds where even that setup wouldn't work in low wind because the sails are just too heavy. So that's when we put out the spinnaker, and the spinnaker worked great. But the spinnaker, very light material. I mean, when you hear it go kapow, like sometimes if the wind was sort of dying and then it would catch up again, it would go out again, and you'd hear this pop, and you always worry that it's just going to split. So we're all a little nervous about this very, very thin spinnaker, and we felt a lot more, we could sleep at night without worrying when we had the jib and the genoa out in a wing-on-wing combination. So
someone says you can open that lens and clean it yourself. Well, we'll try that. We will YouTube tutorial.
Yeah, I'll manually have to force it open and get in there and with a brush and try to get out whatever sand's in there.
Do you get credit on your license or certification for Transocean crossing?
Yeah.
It's a qualification towards a licensed captain.
So yeah, to get your commercial captain's license, you need a certain number of sea hours or sea days. And what I'll do is when I go through that, I probably will go through that, I'm guessing. But I'd get Paul and or John to write me a letter saying that, yes, I was
Bye,
on.
Cheryl. Thanks
Bye,
for
Cheryl.
This is getting long. I just looked at that. This is our longest chat.
Yeah, well, there's a bigger story this time than usual.
More to talk about.
But yeah, so the captain's license requires a certain amount of sea hours. And of course, we're on Lake Ontario, which doesn't count as sea hours. So this crossing of the Atlantic will help a lot in getting me my required amount of sea days or hours to get my captain's license. So if I want to do that.
Yes.
You don't need that if it's your own boat, but if we ever decide to try and pick up a little money on the side, a little retop up the cruising kitty, if I have my commercial license, I can actually deliver somebody else's boat for them. They could say, "Oh, my boat's."
Or we could take paid crew. I mean, paid whatever, like an Airbnb or whatever.
Yeah, you could have people come on your boat and you could do a crossing with them, and your insurance company would probably be okay with it because you're a commercial licensed captain and all that stuff. As opposed to if you're not and you bring paid crew or paid guests on your boat, and your insurance company might be like, no, we're not covering you for that. You're not trained for that sort of thing. So yeah, okay. Anything else?
Oh, now that Cheryl and Paul are off, was Paul closer to Captain Ron or Captain Queeg? Who's Captain Queeg? Is that a movie we need to see?
Captain Ron, you know who that is.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple times, but I
don't know Captain Queeg either, but I'm assuming one's good and one's not so good. Captain Ron was kind of a joke. No, he's great. He's great. Paul's an awesome skipper. We called him Skipper all the time, so it was good. All right, so unless there's any other questions.
Yes, we're almost hitting an hour here. It's the longest chat ever.
It is good. But it's really fun to talk to all you guys, and this is nice to do live. I got this idea because
I learned how to delete, and I just learned how to block that dating girl site.
Yeah, I mean, we can't control that. Obviously, it's live.
But I blocked them, so now they can never come back. Or is it just for this chat?
I don't know. Probably forever. Anyways, sorry if you had to read it. I didn't even read it.
Yeah, I was like.
Anyways,
I wasn't doing my job. I've been drinking. Kamado Jones asked, "What's in here?" Obviously, it's the rum and coke. What's Appleton Estates?
Are we still getting stuff, or did you? Oh, you've scrolled up. We're not seeing the new stuff. That's why.
Oh. Okay.
All right. I held for review. I love you both. Okay. Somebody put an F-bomb in support of us, so you can show that one if you want.
Okay. Yeah, it's fun. I learned. Now I can do that. I'll be a better moderator next time.
Yeah, we're learning. This is only our Second or third?
Yeah.
Third.
I was like, how do you delete these people? I keep like right clicking on them. It turns out there's 3 tiny dots.
Right.
All the way over near the margin. And that you can select to delete or block or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Merry Christmas also.
Yes, Merry
everybody.
Christmas. So these episodes are going to go out as fast as I can. A guy named Chase Mixon, which I mentioned in the last episode, he's graciously helped in the last episode and in the one I'm about to do, where he takes all the raw footage and he goes in and he kind of just scrubs it for the good stuff and then sends me back a file of this is the good stuff according to him. And then I go in and I cut it again to get it down smaller and then put some music and my voiceovers and boom. But by him going through all the raw footage and kind of narrowing it down, it really saves me a ton of time because like sometimes the cameras are just, especially when I was in the old city this next episode, I'm just walking around with the camera on a gimbal running like for almost the whole time. So there's a lot of footage to go through to find the little pieces that are the best. So thanks to Chase. I appreciate your time and that's going to help speed things along. So, because I do have a real job, just in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
I do have to go to work. People are like, we want those sailing episodes now. I'm like, I got to get through them as time allows me to work on them. So anyways, I guess that's it.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. That's it for now. And I'll talk to you next time we do a live one. So when something good comes up, send us an email at cruisingoffduty@gmail.com. If you have anything you want to ask me a question offline, go for it there. And that's it. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Talk to you later. How do I cancel this thing?
I don't
Oh, there
know.
we are.
We're still here.